Stacy had always felt like an outsider in her family. Her father, Fred, was a closed book, treating her with a cold detachment that made her wonder why he seemed to favor her brothers over her. Walter, George, and Victor were everything Fred admired, musically gifted and extroverted. Stacy, on the other hand, was artistic, introverted, and had never shown any talent for music. Her attempts to connect with her father through the family's shared passion for music ended in disaster, like the time she broke all the strings on a guitar and earned his silent, simmering anger. Over time, Stacy stopped trying, but as she grew older, the distance between her and her father gnawed at her. Why did he treat her so differently? Why did he seem so cold? Her mother, Marie, was loving and attentive, but she refused to discuss Fred's behavior. "He's just reserved," Marie would say, dismissing Stacy's concerns. Yet, Stacy couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play. The mystery began to consume her. One day, while cleaning the house, Stacy stumbled upon an old photograph tucked between the pages of a dusty book. The photo was of a baby girl, Stacy, but she didn't recognize the setting. It wasn't their home or any place she had ever seen. She took the photo to her mother, who grew visibly uncomfortable and said, "You should talk to your father about this." But Stacy knew better than to approach Fred with such questions. The last time she had asked about their family history, he had erupted in uncharacteristic anger, forbidding her from ever prying into his past. Determined to uncover the truth, Stacy began her investigation. Her first stop was the local library, where she spent days combing through old records and newspapers for anything about her family. Despite her efforts, she found nothing significant. Frustrated, but undeterred, she remembered the attic, a forbidden space in their house that had always been locked. One evening, after her father had fallen asleep in front of the television, Stacy decided to take her chances. Armed with a ladder and a pair of hairpins she had seen used in lockpicking tutorials, she climbed up to the attic hatch. To her astonishment, the technique worked, and the padlock clicked open. She pushed the hatch aside and climbed into the cold, dusty space. The attic was filled with boxes, old furniture, and forgotten relics of the past. As she searched, her flashlight beam landed on a suitcase. It had her name written on it in bold black letters. Her heart pounded as she unlatched the case and opened it. Inside were stacks of papers and photographs. Some were baby pictures of her she had never seen before. Others were school photos she didn't remember being taken. There were documents too, but they didn't make sense at first glance. Among them was a red binder filled with records that appeared to be from a hospital. Stacy's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages, scanning for something, anything, that would explain why these were hidden. The binder contained lists of names, dates, and medical information. Stacy's name wasn't there, but the binder was in her suitcase. Why? She packed everything back into the suitcase and carefully closed the hatch before returning to her room. Laying out the contents on her bed, she tried to piece together the puzzle, but the questions only multiplied. Why had her father hidden these photos and documents? Why did none of it make sense? The realization hit her. She needed proof. A DNA test was the only way to get the answers she sought. Convincing her brothers and mother to participate in the test was easier than she expected. Marie, while hesitant, agreed to Stacy's request. Her brothers were curious but cooperative. The real challenge was Fred. Stacy knew he would never willingly participate, so she waited until he was asleep and carefully swabbed his mouth. Her heart raced the entire time, but he didn't wake up. With the samples collected, Stacy sent them off to the lab. The wait for the results was agonizing. Every day, she watched the mail like a hawk, ensuring that she intercepted the envelope before her father could see it. Finally, the day arrived. The large envelope was heavy in her hands, its weight a reflection of the answers it held. She ran to her room, shut the door, and spread the papers across her bed. The results confirmed that her brothers and parents were all biologically related to each other. Then came her own results. Stacy's hand shook as she read the words. She was not biologically related to either Fred or Marie. The truth hit her like a freight train. Her father's detachment, her mother's evasiveness, her lifelong feeling of being different. It all made sense now. Stacy wasn't their biological child. Stacy's mind raced. How could this be? She stormed downstairs, clutching the papers, and confronted her parents. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice cracking with emotion. Marie looked at the papers in confusion, clearly as shocked as Stacy. But Fred's expression darkened. He sighed heavily and motioned for her to sit down. "You weren't supposed to find out like this," Fred said, his voice low. "You were switched at birth." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Fred explained how, shortly after Stacy's birth, a mix-up at the hospital had resulted in them bringing home the wrong baby. By the time the mistake was discovered, Fred had tracked down their biological daughter, but he couldn't bear to take Stacy away from Marie. "Your mother loved you too much. I couldn't do it," he admitted. "But I couldn't look at you without thinking about the daughter we lost." Marie's face crumpled as she listened. "You knew?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Fred nodded, guilt etched into his features. "You never told me?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. Stacy's emotions were a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and betrayal. She demanded to know why Fred had hidden this for so long. "I thought I was protecting everyone," Fred said. "I see now that I was wrong." Among the documents Stacy had found were the names of her biological parents. Despite everything, she couldn't ignore the pull to meet them. With her mother's reluctant blessing, Stacy reached out to her biological family. When they met, it was overwhelming. Her biological parents were kind and warm, and they embraced her as if no time had been lost. She learned about her biological siblings, her heritage, and the life she might have lived. But as wonderful as they were, Stacy couldn't shake the bond she felt with the woman who had raised her. Over time, Stacy began to reconcile her feelings. She maintained contact with her biological family but chose to stay with Marie, who had loved her unconditionally despite everything. Fred, too, began to change. The revelation brought him face to face with his own failings as a father, and he made efforts to rebuild his relationship with Stacy. It was slow and awkward, but for the first time, Stacy felt like he was trying. In the end, Stacy realized that family isn't just about biology. It's about love, loyalty, and the people who stand by you. Her journey for answers had uncovered painful truths, but it also gave her a deeper understanding of herself and her place in the world. Though the scars of the past would never fully fade, Stacy knew she had the strength to move forward, surrounded by a family, biological and chosen, who loved her.